Well, high inflation and rising interest rates are leading to real pain for mortgage holders. And there's also a knock-on impact for the rental market. We discussed some of the mounting challenges with a panel of interested parties. Lindsay McMenemy, you're a mortgage advisor. So if interest rates go up as expected tomorrow, what's that going to mean for people whose fixed rate mortgage deals are coming to an end?
Yes, we are starting to see some clients come off a 1 and 2% interest rate now when their remortgage is due for renewal. So it's certainly been a worrying time for many people across the board, and mortgage brokers are having to work as hard as ever for some of our clients to look at options to try and get them the best possible deal that's out there at the moment.
And so what advice are you giving to people generally then, Lindsay?
Is really to have a look at exactly what they have and how we can help. I feel that more people are starting to engage with a broker, and although we always recommend to pay off your mortgage as soon as you possibly can, we are starting to see clients asking for extended terms to make that monthly payments coming in a bit lower.
So what are people's monthly payments going up to in kind of worst case scenarios?
In some cases, it can be £500, £600, £700 of a difference for people who are on the lower. And some people have been opting to use savings to pay down some of the balance to bring the monthly payments back in with affordability.
Right, and so what's your advice to first-time buyers specifically? Should they be hanging fire at the moment?
I guess, in terms of where the market was back in August, it was very busy. It's starting to slow now. So for first-time buyers who don't have a property to sell, there is a lot of good deals at the moment. But again, it is looking at trying to squeeze the best possible deal that is available to them. And they are requiring the advice from us as professionals, just the way the market is at the moment.
Let's widen this discussion out now. And join me now is Raz Parnaz, a landlord, and Rosie Hampton from the Tenants Union Living Rent. So Raz, as a landlord, what's the knock-on effect of mortgage rates rising then?
I mean, the monthly payments, first of all, are going to increase. As soon as the rate goes up, it's going to affect our monthly instalments, and therefore, as a landlord, we won't be able to pass that cost on to the tenants. So therefore we have to fit the bill ourselves, and that deficit we have to cover as a landlord.
So you wouldn't pass any of the costs on to your tenants, not even a little bit?
Because of legislations in place, the maximum you're allowed, I think at the moment, is 3%, and which won't cover it, especially if you rise, is approximately £400 to £700 a month increase.
Right, so you're facing potentially a lot of extra costs, aren't you? And so, Rosie, what are tenants saying to you? What are the challenges that they're facing?
So I think for tenants, we empathise a lot with first-time buyers and, people who are facing these increases because, for us, rents have been rising for a decade now. So we really empathise with a really sharp rise in costs. I think in Glasgow alone, we've seen rents go up 80% over the past decade. So I think when we look at these kind of mortgage rates and going up, etc., we're, able to kind of see the insecurity in that. And so we really welcome Scottish Government legislation around the rent freeze, the rent cap, so that, that inaffordability isn't passed on to very low income and middle income tenants who then could potentially be forced out of their homes due to rent increases and the like.
But are some people struggling to find properties to rent that they can afford? It's a very competitive market at the moment.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think that's exactly why we've been advocating for, a housing system that actually does enable people to find good quality, affordable, safe housing. And we think that should be done by a system of robust rent controls that are points-based and actually are able to bring rents down through that are attached to the property rather than the tenancy, so that people can't be evicted and give them more security and affordability.
So, Raz, looking to the future, can you continue to operate like your business like this? What might you have to change what you're doing? Might you have to sell a property?
For a landlord, and speaking on behalf of probably many landlords that could be in this position, they would probably most likely, if the tenants can't afford to pay the rent to cover the monthly instalments, and if the landlord has to find other means to cover that deficit, and then the only thing I can see is most landlords are probably looking to sell up or find an alternative, because we are in hard times. The cost of living, everything is going up. Inflation is at highest levels, at all-time high at the moment. And as a landlord, and speaking on behalf of everybody, the times are hard.
Yeah, and Lindsay, what is your perception about what all this means for the rental market?
Yes, I mean the lenders are have stress tests which are getting bigger, so the rental income that they require to cover that buy-to-let mortgage is very high at the moment. Certainly the Bank of England's job is to curb inflation. Their target is 2% and we're sitting at 8.7%, so this is a reason for the rises that we are seeing at the moment, and I think that as soon as we start to have less disposable income and stop spending, we may see that start to reduce.
I mean, Rosie, we're talking about mortgages here, but there's many people that couldn't even contemplate finding the funds to get a mortgage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when we talk about mortgage rates increasing, often it's still cheaper to get a mortgage than it is to rent. But if, disproportionately we see lower income people in the private rented sector, so it's very unlikely for people to be able to kind of get out of that, to be able to purchase a home even if they want to. So that traps them in flats that can be really poor quality, can be unsafe even at the worst end, and also be completely unaffordable. So you're constantly trapped in that cycle. And
to go back to what Raz is saying about landlords potentially having to sell up, I mean, that's going to have an effect on the rental market, isn't it? It's going to make things even more difficult.
Well, I suppose when, landlords have to sell up, and that could be one option that they have on account of these rising mortgage rates, the physical property doesn't go anywhere. So that could be sold on to another landlord who could take it on and take even the same tenant on, so that tenant doesn't lose their home, because, that's what the tenant is facing when landlords sell up. They lose their home potentially rather than the landlord just losing their income. But that home could also go to somebody who is a first-time buyer, and then that's somebody else taken out of the rental market, and then that demand is lessened, and then you're kind of lessening the kind of tight squeeze and hopefully ensuring more affordable options for everybody.
So it might help then if people like Raz sell their properties then?
I think there is an argument to be made that the general kind of squeeze and lack of regulation on the private rented sector in general is making it very difficult for people.
What do you think about that?
I mean, the way the regulations are set in place at the moment, I think they need to re-look at them and reassess them, because they need to look at the problems the landlords are facing, and we understand that it has got a domino knock-on effect on everybody, so down the chain it affects everybody, but they need to be fair and re-look at the legislation in favour of the landlords, and we understand in favour of the tenants. I mean, nobody wants to be made homeless or be thrown out of their house or evicted at the end of the day, so nobody's here to do that.
Yeah, and Lindsay, in terms of these mortgage payments going up, as you mentioned, by quite substantial amounts. I mean, is there a fear that people are going to have to sell their homes, lose their homes?
I think across the board, people have been expecting, if their rate has been coming up after what's happened over the last year. Again, it's all about timing, because back in October, things went very high, then it started to settle, and again, things over the last couple of weeks have gone back up again, and we have the impending meeting tomorrow with the Bank of England, so it's likely. So I really feel that clients are expecting that. As I said, there's various things that we can recommend to help them with those monthly payments, and a lot of people are reaching out for that advice at the moment.
Okay, Lindsay, Raz and Rosie, thank you all very much indeed for joining us this evening. Thank you.